So, all right, welcome everybody to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 31, and we have the renowned comic book writer and owner of Sigmate Studio. Sigmate, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Steven's with us. Steven, thank you. So we're gonna be doing a deep dive. We're gonna talk about a lot of your books that you've written, a lot of the graphic novels that you've wrote. And we're also gonna really talk a lot about your latest Kickstarter, Transhuman, Rivka's story, which just launched this past Sunday. So it's only a couple days old,
Yeah.
and you've already hit 78% of your goal, and you still have 26 days left. So congratulations so far.
And look, I always say, look, thank you to everybody who supports graphic novels. It's tough. It's tough being a creative, and it's basically with your support that we can bring stories to life. And I've always said, if you wanted to make money, this is the wrong industry for you. But if you want to tell a good story, please come join us, basically. But it's not a money thing. I'm really sorry.
So
I'm going to be a bit depressing that way.
So for some of the audience members that maybe some of the listeners and also some of the viewers of this who want to learn more about you, Steven, do you want to give a background on how you got into writing and producing comics and graphic novels?
Okay. Look, I love comics since I was a kid. I think my mom bought me a Batman comic. This is going back 30-something years, and I loved it. I loved the medium, and more importantly, I love how I think it's slightly more US thing, but comics are usually associated with superheroes in the US. Superhero comics. It's kind of synonymous. I grew up in Southeast Asia, which means I got exposed to a lot of manga and a lot of Chinese comics as well, and even a lot from the European comics. And what you find is they treat comics as a medium. So you've got stories about cooking, you've got love stories, you've got like Tintin and stuff like that on Asterix, which are all those adventure stories. And I love superheroes as well. Don't get me wrong, but it's just really nice to see that slow move back into comics as a storytelling medium, as opposed to just a superhero medium. And you don't have to look too far back. Even if you go back in the US about 40, 50 years ago, you had all those really cool Western comics, cowboy comics. You had, love stories. And man, it's really, really good that storytelling is going back to that as well, while still maintaining some really, really good superhero comics. Like, I think DC is knocking out the park with the current Joker arc. They're making Joker into this huge villain, and I think that's fantastic. And the other thing would be like Keanu Reeves is getting to Kickstarter as well, which I think is fantastic because it brings an audience which may not like the medium, but may like Keanu, and suddenly they're there. And if they like comics as a medium, man, we've got a whole lot more fans, whole lot more people who want to read the medium, and I think that's fantastic. I'll throw it back to you, Barney, a little bit. What type of comics do you enjoy? Do you read just the superhero one? I can see Amazing Fantasy 15 behind you, and everybody knows what that cover is. But in terms of beyond the superhero genre, do you read, more comics than that?
Well, yeah, I think also the resurgence of some, especially through Kickstarter and Indiegogo, some really good, really good slice of life comic books, some really good slice of life graphic novels that are coming out. I got a little one. I got a little girl. So these children's books that are actually made like comic books are pretty popular as well, that I like to read as well. And I think it's you have to have an engaging story that matches the art of it as well. But Yeah, any of that, even like the small indie press stuff, the zines. I'll if it has panels to it, I'll read it. So yeah.
Oh, but look at it this way. Look at the New York Times kids bestsellers. I'm gonna butcher her surname, so I'm really sorry, Reina Taglamaya.
Mhm.
I look, my daughter loves her. She wrote all the Babysitter Clubs, the Smile, um, even like the Dog Man, and all those books, the different scholastics books. Oh man, they are amazing. And the introduction to kids as from those books as a comic medium, I think is fantastic. And they are all bestsellers. Like they sell like crazy, which means kids love them. And I, as a parent, when you read it to your kids as well, the stories are really, really well done. They are absolutely fantastic, and the themes that are involved. I think the one that I really like about from Reina is a story called. Man, I'm gonna do a quick Google. I think it's called Ghost,
Mm.
and it's just about. You've heard a bit of the historical background, the Day of the Dead. Um, what was the one? Coco, the Pixar movie,
Right.
also touched on that a lot. A lot of that concept there, and I love it because and this is what I think: never talk down to your audience. Like, and you think, oh, she's 8. Well, we don't want to talk about death. We don't want to talk about afterlife, passing away. Forget that. Introduce it to kids in a way which is sensible, which is fair, which is think, and they will understand. They will absolutely understand. Um, I want to spruik one on my own. Like Tabby is one of the first graphic novels I wrote, and it's basically a retelling of Romeo and Juliet with cats. Um, Small spoiler: unlike the Shakespearean tragedy, all the cats live. I didn't kill anybody. So if just let you for parents trying to look for this book, all the cats live. So don't have to worry about that. But it's not a happy ending. And that's why I really enjoyed writing it. In the end, the two little kittens who fell in love have to separate. And I'm sorry, I'm spoiling the book a little bit. But when I still do a lot of library and school workshops. And when I ever bring the story up, and kids who read it, ask me questions, they love it mainly because it's sad. And when I talk about the books to them, I say, you should raise the question: have you ever had somebody who's left your life? Your best friend who's moved to a different school, your uncle's family, or your cousin's family who had to move overseas or move to a different city, and all the rest of it. And guess what? A lot of those themes are universal, and that's why I love books which don't talk down to kids, but actually think, you know what? They have emotions. They feel the same things we do. They can't express or control it as well as adults can, but it doesn't mean they don't feel sadness. They don't feel when somebody moves away or somebody passes away. And it's usually with storytelling that you can introduce these concepts in a way that isn't as shocking. Like it's, I remember when my grandma passed away. It still hits. It's bam, and it doesn't. Nothing. I would say nothing in the world really prepares you for something like that. But I suppose that's where good literature allows you to relate to that beforehand. And I love that concepts about putting really deep concepts into books, because guess what? Kids love it. Kids absolutely love it. And as an adult reading it, you can relate. And if it's a good story, man, you'll love it too. Pixar is the absolute master of that. They have storytellers there. I'm absolutely in awe of. Yeah, just amazing.
And you have and you, Stephen, you've put out I've counted, so you have like 11 Kickstarters, so 11 books that you've produced,
Yep,
and each one is, well, I mean, it varies. You've, like you said, you mentioned Tabby, which was the first book, and that came out. You launched that back in 2014, correct?
December 2014. I
Yeah.
think. Yep.
Yeah, and then from there you worked with, and like, and you had I gotta make sure I say his name right. P.R. Daedalus.
That's correct. I
Okay.
can't pronounce his first name, and he doesn't want me to pronounce his first name. He's a Polish name. I'm not going to try. So
Yeah.
we've agreed. He preferred it that way anyway. So
And you had him, and you worked with him for basically from Tabby to 5 Seconds to Blue to Wordsmith. You worked with PR Daedalus throughout pretty
oh
much
no,
for most of your
with
books.
Blue I worked with a different artist. So I do try to work with different people at different times.
Okay.
Whatever suits. Like PR mentioned to me, he's not very big on the science fiction genre. So if you notice, Terra Olympus, which is very science fiction, I went with a different artist. So
Von Randall, correct?
correct.
Yeah, yeah.
So I try to get artists which they like the subject matter, because guess what? I'm not going to give PR something that he dreads doing or he hates doing, because there's no point in it. There's no passion there,
Right. So how did you? And we'll talk about your writing, because you, as I say, this Tabby compared to Terra Olympus. I mean, these are completely different stories.
Yeah,
I mean, in a good way. I mean, so I guess my question. So, and I said, we'll talk about that in a bit, about your different stories and the different books that you've created. But for the people that are listening or watching who want to write comics, who have the stories to tell, and they're going to say, Stephen, I have a story I want to tell. How did you find an artist? How did you do that? So what was your steps? Like, talking about, for instance, Tabby, first of all, it's like, when you decided, I had this story, what were the steps you took to actually find the artist, get the letterer, all that stuff, and then get the book produced? What were the steps you took?
Look, I love the internet. Look, again, for people who didn't know, we had a private chat about before we came through, about how amazing the internet is. Mainly because, honestly, 10 years ago, this would have been very, very difficult to do. It wasn't that hard to find. No, I'll take it back. So what I did was, there was a site before Facebook groups and all those connecting sites for connecting groups became very popular. But there was a site called Freelancer. And basically, you posted up hey, look, I want to do something. And basically, people responded. So I posted up the thing for Tabby. I said, look, I'm looking for an artist. I'll pay X amount. This is the concepts. You must like to draw cats. And, I gave a lot of few concept ideas. And what I then did was, I posted up a one-page script as well. And I said to them, look, here's your one-page script. Unfortunately, I can't pay for the one-page script, but it's the same page script for everybody. So, I'm not trying to profit off free work. I'm not trying to say, hey, somebody do page 1, 2, and then I'll compile it after. So it's basically, here's your trial page, and it's the same trial page for everybody. I think I got more than 100 and something responses. Just bam, 100 something responses. Of which I think there were about 10 who said they want to be paid for the trial page. And I'm really, really sorry, because if I pay for the trial page and there's 100 responses, I would have paid for the whole book, just on the trial page. So, and, we part ways and said, that's fine, that's okay, so we lost quite a few people that way. Then there were a whole bunch of people who said we were going to do it. And I gave them a huge time frame. I said, look, you've got 4 weeks. Get me the page within the 4 weeks. And if you get it earlier, great. I'll review it quicker. If not, and of that, I think about half of them didn't respond within that 4-week period. And that's okay too, because either they're too busy, which is fine, or they didn't like the subject matter, or whatever. Doesn't matter. So I got back about, say, 40 trial pages of people who actually completed the trial page. And they were and it's pretty easy, because I kind of knew what I was after. So I got it down to about 5 people. And once you reach down to that 5, it feels like a job interview. Then you start negotiating rates to say, hey, look, what rate are you in? Because the creative field is actually very different in rates, because somebody who's been there a long time is worth a lot more than somebody who hasn't been. So you negotiate all that. And then basically from there, I got it down to 2 people, and my gut said, look, I'll run with PR, and that's how I got started. And the good thing about it is, after I got with PR, we worked on quite a few other projects. We're actually working on a project right now. I think the latest Wordsmith, Volume 3. So we're still working on projects together. So it's really good. I think I made the right choice, because we've built up this relationship over five years now, where, guess what? He's still sending me artwork. In fact, he actually sent me some drafts, which I need to review and send back to him. So it's, with the internet there, it's not that hard. The only thing I would caution would be the usual, like everything else, try to find the right person, and get recommendations as well. Ask, because some people are difficult to work with, and it's find somebody who fits how you work, basically.
And so you as you said, you have you've done a lot of projects with him. So
Yeah.
what was, and even though you're now, worked with him now for almost, what are we talking about, 6 years now, you guys have been working together. Do you still, is there any point as running Sigmate Studio as a business, are you still pretty strict with, where you're saying, PR, I still have to do a contract? Do you still keep things businessy as well? Do you still make sure you're pretty strict with that?
Of course. So we have, mainly because you have to be. You absolutely have to be. So look, I would consider him a good friend now. Like, we talk every day. Like, I talk to him about my kids. He talks to me about his family and stuff like that. And you know what I mean? Once it reaches a certain point, you become colleagues. So I absolutely do not think I'm the boss. Absolutely do not. But saying that, though, you do need contracts, just because you've heard the horror stories. Like, I think you heard the Todd McFarlane and Neil Gaiman over Angela. They had a handshake agreement, and that turned out to be lawsuits and yelling and screaming and all the rest of it. If it was clearly written down, this is work for hire, or if this was a shared project, none of this would have happened. It would have been just very clear. And the act of actually writing it down and getting someone to sign off on it removes a lot of the ambiguity. Because, if I was working, say, with yourself, we could be thinking, oh, let's work on this project together, and there's a lot of excitement around it. But you might be assuming that you are a co-creator, and I might be assuming that I'm going to pay you work for higher rates. So it's always really good to put everything down and then sign off on it. That way, there's no ambiguity. Because, for example, I think I was actually, unfortunately, this has been a really funny year. But prior to all the restrictions, the pandemic, and all the rest of it, Wordsmith actually got signed up for an animation deal, which I was really, really happy about. But the good thing about that is it then meant there's no ambiguity on who's the creator, what rights each, myself or PR and all the rest got. So, and I think for me, it made it really, really clear to sign contracts and take your deals further up, because you know exactly where you stand. So to your point, contracts, 100%, every project, sign it up, just for your own peace of mind. And if the person on the other end is legitimate, they'll be fine too, because they'll sign it as well, because it's clear and it's concise. So,
and so because you work with it, and as you mentioned, it's kind of like it's a team. So as the writer and the creator of Tabby, Wordsmith, 5 Seconds, Blue, all these books that you come out, now that you have you have this relationship with PR, and even so, if like your colorist or that stuff, so as the writer, I love this question, is how much have they, as it draws it out, does he say, listen, Stephen, I think it would make a lot more sense if we do this instead? How much has he kind of had to rewrite some stuff, because how many good ideas did you have that didn't make the final cut?
Not so much PR, but I've got an editor, and to be fair, you won't see the name being mentioned because she wanted no credit. She just basically said, I'm almost retiring and all the rest of it. I want no credit because as much as I love things, I don't want somebody to reach out to me, for whatever reason. She just wants to be private, and that's fine. I have absolutely no problem with that. But she was actually reviewing one of the stories I was writing, and I think in about book 4, a particular character dies, and I remember she called me up and she said along the lines of, "If you kill her, I'm off this project." I'm going, what? She's going, I love this character so much. If you kill her, I'm off this project. I'm going, but she dies. But it's a really heroic death. It sets all the stuff up. She just goes, being very clear with you. She dies, I'm off. So we had a chat about, then we had the longer chat about, hey, look, maybe it was a little too premature. Maybe, I'm missing a lot of things. So she gets this particular character, in the end, she lives. The editor convinced me she lived. But in terms of, say, the colorist, what the colorist brings, and if we'll talk about it a little bit in Transhuman, and a little bit in Wordsmith if you like, what the colorist brings is not so much the change to the story, but he'll bring the change to, actually, that's a good time. Can you bring up Transhuman for a second?
Sure.
And this is the stuff the colorist brings, and we can jump back to Ning as well. So if you scroll down a little bit, down to the actual pages itself, Transhuman has a conflict story. Basically, it's about a little bit about religion and science, and it's a little bit of a deep dive into different points of views. The scientist is very blue because he's very analytical. The priest is very, you can see he's actually very brownish, very earth-like tones, very down to earth type feel. And if you scroll down a bit more, you can see how important color plays to it. So in a lot of the situations when I'm talking with the colorist, I'm always of the fact, hey, you help me out. I know what I'm trying to convey. We actually had a good, I think, a 2-hour chat with the colorist. His name is Chris Picane. He's actually also in Australia. But we had a chat about the story. Okay, what are you trying to convey? Who's bad, who's good? I'm going, actually, in this story is actually really interesting because there is no bad, there's no good. It's different points of view. And he's going, great. And if you scroll down a bit more, the reds, the browns, and all those type of colors are usually associated one way. And Rivka, in this case, when she gets home, she's very blue because guess what? Her life's a mess, and so a lot of things are that blue, but it's not a very good blue. It's a very faded type bluish effects because guess what? Her life, she's like a black and white story. She's not happy, and so although it's blue, you can see that she's not a happy character, and a lot of the colors bring that out. And so even in Wordsmith, where we're talking colors and different people and different situations, it's actually very, very important. Like, for example, this is the exciting part of Wordsmith where it's the competition. And you notice the background's that pink, that, oh gosh, the anticipation, because red is much more what they always, red always links up with action or desire and stuff like that. So they both want to win. So it builds up the tension just by having that type of color background.
That's interesting.
And that's what the colorist brings. And that's what a good colorist, when you discuss stuff with him, he'll go, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And have you thought about this? And in terms of character designs, because what I usually say to PR, I describe the character, and he usually goes, how about she looks like this, or he looks like this, or whatever. And it's really fascinating to see what ideas they have in your head, because there's times when PR has gone to me and go, you know what, that character shouldn't look like this. Here's what I propose. And there's points even in Transhuman and in Wordsmith where I try to cram in too many panels on the page. And I know I do that, But what they'll come back to me and goes, look, I can do what you asked me to, but I think the story suffers. It's better, the whole thing about comics is every second page has to end in kind of a mini cliffhanger that you try to get the audience to flip the next page. It's the same thing when you write a novel. Every chapter has to end with something that wants them to read the next chapter. So with comics, it's every second page, because you can think every depends on whether you have a title page or not. It's every second page or every third page. You want them to flip the next page. And so with storytelling, you always say to them, hey, look, it's better you leave a bit of tension here so they flip and they read the next page. And that's what a good artist will bring. He'll say, hey, look, your storytelling, I know what the story is, but you could do the frame slightly differently. And PR is brilliant at that. And that's where a good colorist is that. But story-wise is usually the editor. And like I said, my editor almost quit on me. But the whole point is, I find I do take a lot of what they say to heart, because guess what? When you have a good team, you have to really trust what they do. And they give a lot of good suggestions, a lot of good ideas.
And so talk to us a bit about how I'm just amazed about all the different books graphic novels you've written and how they're so different. So what's your process of how you write these out? Do you have a character in mind and then you just decide, do you have a plot hook in mind, or do you have a world you create and try to find a story within that? How do you build these stories?
And this is what I'm going to say to any aspiring writers out there. God, all of the above. And one thing you probably don't hear from a lot of writers, I have a project graveyard, which it's just folders of projects which are half done, half complete. It's ideas I've rejected. Some I've done concepts for, some I haven't. I have a project graveyard, because guess what? You're not going to progress with everything, because guess what? So, for example, Transhuman, I did some work for a hearing aid company. So the whole concept behind Transhuman was that humanity, like your eyes or whatever, have a certain frequency they can hear. And the eyes have a certain wavelength that they can see. And what happens if you insert an augmentation that allows you to extend beyond what humans are normally allowed to do? Like, I don't know if you know, the color cyan does not exist. It does not exist. You have 3 cones in your eye, your receptors, that basically does not register cyan as a wavelength properly. It doesn't. So that color in your head does not exist. So do you know what your brain does? It picks something, and that's your cyan. And then it actually happens for a whole stack of colors that actually your brain, your eyes cannot perceive it. So your brain just goes, screw this. This is what we think cyan is. And I think that's fascinating. What happens if we actually had the correct receptor in there? Cyan could be totally different to us. We could go, oh gosh, that. And the whole point is, because that cyan is what your brain dictates it to be, because it doesn't exist in your eyes cannot perceive it. Your cyan, if we could swap brains or swap the the visual processing power of our brains, if we could swap that, your color scheme would be totally different to my color scheme. I'll be going, wait, that's how you see red? That's ridiculous. Your red is totally off. Because think about it. Describe the color red to me. You can't. You cannot describe the color red to me, because you can describe it in comparison to something else, like, oh, it's like an apple or whatever. But actually describe the color red to me, it's impossible, because it's your perception of it. And your perception of all these things are different from my perception. So I love that's how Transhuman started. That's exactly how it started, just because I was doing a project in a hearing aid company. And I think Wordsmith, for example, was much more the world, because the concept behind that is words are important, and you build a whole steampunk world around the invention. And Tabby was much more a story I wanted my daughter to be able to read, and something that it was a sad story, so I could relate different things to her. You know what, so and so, one of her friends left school and went to different things, and it's easy then to relate. You know what, you're not going to see her for a long time because she moved to a different state. But guess what? It doesn't mean you're not friends. It doesn't mean there's no connection there. And more importantly, it doesn't mean the time you had together, in kindergarten or whatever, didn't mean anything, because guess what? Those memories are actually just as important as everything else. So in terms of stories, gosh, but my one advocate for, at least my one point for writing for stories, is sometimes people get too bogged down with ideas. And so for the longest time, I had this graveyard of stuff. And one of the challenges I think I had was, and this was something when I was talking to, because I had an editor back then who was helping me out with bits and pieces, is just finish a goddamn story. That's probably the absolute first step you need to do. You have all these ideas, pick one and finish it. It doesn't matter if it's good. It doesn't matter if it's bad. It matters if it's done, because a completed story has so much power to it that you would not believe when you finish it. Look, I procrastinated for close to more than a decade before I actually finished my first story. I had all these ideas, all this, I can do this, I can do this. But guess what? When I actually finished my first story, it took more than 10 years to finish one story. But the funny thing is, once you finished one, the second one becomes easier. The third one becomes easier. The fourth one becomes easier. So write down all your ideas, definitely, but finish a story. I've got finished stories which I never progress with. They're just sitting there. And I will probably never progress with half the finished stories I've written, mainly because sometimes you don't have time. But guess what? When you finish it, it shows you can do it, because a lot of people get discouraged. And my whole point would be, set yourself a time, write the 1 or 2 pages every day, and in a month, it's going to be done. And there's a huge power to do that and actually finish it.
And so do you have, so how much of what you do are all these stories, and we're going to talk about the world building aspect of this, are all these stories, is there like a shared Sigmate universe? Like, is there, or is they all separate? Or do you have any big shared universe idea of maybe even putting in some Easter eggs? Like, is there in Wordsmith where you have like, a character from Tabby walking in the background or anything like that?
I do the Easter egg thing a lot. So if you actually, a lot of the characters in the backgrounds are family or friends. So I remember once one of my friends, she was reading, I can't remember what she was. I think she was reading Tabby, and she's going, "Hey, that guy in the background, he's pretty cute." And I was going, "Oh, do you want his number? Because he's this person." So I do a lot of that, and there's a lot of, but in terms of the connectivity of the stories, it's a bit difficult because they're where they're set is so different. Like I think Terra Olympus is a dystopian space station. Wordsmith is steampunk. So having that shared universe concept is a bit difficult. Plus, I like to keep certain stories I like to keep separate. Like, for example, with Wordsmith, I have a arc in my head. Same with Terra Olympus. I know what happened. I've got in my head what happens at the end of Terra Olympus. And I think, as fun as it is to chuck in a couple of Easter eggs to try to merge stories, I think sometimes both stories come out worse for wear when you try to merge them.
And so with your Kickstarters, I saw something that was pretty interesting about your Kickstarters, is that your recent ones that you did, and I'm going to ask you this: is this a strategy on your part to actually have your last ones, your Terra Olympus and your Wordsmith, you actually have them as volume 1 and 2? Is there, because this is really about the second volume, but you don't want to have anybody get lost in. So is that a marketing piece for you to do that?
A little bit, and for me, definitely. So even for, and the one thing I picked up, say with 5 seconds, because 5 seconds is 3 volumes, is some people who looked at 5 seconds go, oh, it's volume 3. I'm sorry, I came in too late. And I was trying to convince them a lot. Hey, look, you can still get volume 1 and volume 2 from this Kickstarter. But you know what I mean? You gotta hook somebody in 10 seconds to click on the link. You know what I mean? Otherwise, they're gonna scroll right past it. So I think it's always really important. And if you ever kickstarting a second volume, always say volume 1 and volume 2, because they then know volume 1 is still available. If you were a previous fan, and again, to all previous fans, thank you so much for all your support. But the good thing about it is they'll come in just for volume 2, which is fine. I've got no issue with that. But for anybody who's new, they'll go, man, I can get into the story straight away. I get volume 1 and volume 2. The other thing I always do as well is sometimes people don't want to buy the back catalog. Like say with Wordsmith, with 5 seconds, they might not want to buy a physical copy of volume 1 and volume 2. But I want to make it accessible to them. So I always have the PDF of volume 1 and volume 2 always freely available to anybody who comes in. That way, if you don't want to buy the physical copies, you can still get the digital copies of volume 1 and volume 2, and then get the physical copy of volume 3, for example, if that's what you want to do. So I do give a lot of options to it. And I find it in that way, you can retain all your previous fans, as well as hopefully and bring in new fans. So people who haven't seen your work before might go, hey, it's a new story. I'm in. I'm definitely interested to find out. So Transhuman Volume 2 will definitely include Volume 1 as well.
And you've been putting out, I'm looking at the dates on this, you've been putting out Kickstarters at least once a year. You're putting something out twice a year.
Yep.
And so do you have like a as you know, as the webcomic world calls it, a buffer? Do you have projects already kind of lined up for 21 and 2022 and so on?
Look, I don't want to seem like I'm really organized, because I'm not. I don't want to be like, oh, and slated in the fall we have this. Look, I'm not that organized. I'll freely admit to everybody around this. No, I'm not that organized. But I do have a lot. Like I mentioned, I have that project graveyard, which things are in progress within that graveyard. Sometimes you're lucky and things will rise out of that graveyard, which is good. But sometimes they just stay there. So the good thing about it is I have a lot of ideas and different projects in my head, which we bounce back and forth on. The one thing which I am trying better to do is, say for Terra Olympus, which actually ended on the cliffhanger, and Wordsmith Volume 2, which actually ended on a cliffhanger as well. I'm trying to do it so that it becomes a little bit more regular. I think the gap between Terra Olympus 1 and 2 was close to 2 years. Terra Olympus 3 hopefully will be next year, which means the gap will probably be about a year. And Wordsmith, I'm hoping to do towards the end of the year, early next year. So the gap for that will be also about a year. And I'm hoping to get some of that rhythm going so that it's, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. And that way people don't forget the story too much. So you can kind of retain your existing fans a little bit, that they still part of that story. So by the way, 1 year goes past really quickly. And now she's talking back, and this, I love it to bits, but you know what I mean? It's every so often you just go back, wait, you can't be 1 year older. We just had your birthday. What the hell are you talking about? And you find that a lot. And when time rolls past and continuity rolls past, it's crazy. You find that, you know what? A year goes past so quickly. But what I'm trying to do is I am trying to get that 1 year between volumes. Maybe because I'm not a big publisher. I'm doing this to tell stories, and it's been really rewarding for me to do so. So I'm trying to get that 1 year out so that stories keep coming up. And I think that would make me happy if I can continue all the major stories every year. Yeah, I think that would be fantastic. Because I think sorry.
I was going to, and was it and also too, was it strategic on your sense as well to actually now have 3 separate artists for your 3 major books now? You got Wordsmith with PR, you have Von Randall with Terra Olympus, and now you have for Transhuman you got Alan Sands.
Yeah, it's so that they can work like Vaughn is currently working on Terra Olympus Volume 3.
Right.
I think he sent me, I think, the first almost completed batches of them, so it's really good. So the good thing of where I am, and I'm actually very, very fortunate to be in this position, is that because of the previous Kickstarters, I have the funds to fund the next production from previous editions, which has been really lucky for me. And again, thank you everybody for making that happen, which then allows me then to have the different creative teams working. Because in the beginning, I could only run one project at one time just because I didn't have the funds available to do so. But now that, with the additional, like Terra Olympus did really well, so I had the money from Terra Olympus Volume 2 to pay for Volume 3. And what I'm hoping for, I make enough money from Volume 3 to pay for Volume 4. And, it makes a really nice chain going.
Right. And so, and from there, so let's talk about let's actually now let's talk more about Transhuman. So as you said, this was launched 3 days ago. You now have 3 days ago. It is you got 125 backers right now, and you. So to give people kind of we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but now let's kind of do a deep dive on the actual storyline of what someone is, because this is the volume 1 of this. So there's going to be more after this, correct?
Again, if this goes well, and I get. Look, like I was also joking, if you want to come to comics to make money, I'm really sorry. Wrong industry. You do much better with almost anything else. What I'm really hoping for is to make enough of this to make Volume 2 and then fund it on. Because, but if you want, you can play the video first if you like. You can play.
I don't know if sound is going to go through. That's
okay. Oh,
yeah.
But the whole point about Transhuman is and it's called Rivka's story because she's the main character. What you find out about Rivka was, and you see it in the pages, she's an ex-soldier who basically got injured on duty. And part of after she got injured, she was then put into a transhumanism project. A little bit of cyberpunk talk. So there's humans. Transhumans are the people who have been augmented to basically become more than human. And the last part of the whole cyberpunk part is post-human, where you've reached that stage where you're almost unrecognizable. You're that far advanced. You're an ethereal being already. So it's the evolution of humanity. So transhuman is in between humanity and post-humanism. So if you ever want to deep dive into that area, feel free to. It's a rabbit hole, and man, there's so many good stories and themes that can be mined out of that. But I'm sticking with the transhuman part. So the world is on a cusp where cybernetics are actually becoming very, about to go mainstream. Currently, they're not, but they're just about to. And you got the 2 different viewpoints then of science, which is basically we'll do what we want. It's fantastic. Let's give people X-ray vision. And then you've got the other part would be is like, why are you doing this? Oh, because you can. And it's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. I usually relate this a lot to the cloning debate. Right, as of right now, we have the technology to clone humans. Should we do it? I don't know. Is it right? Is it wrong? Does humanity have a soul? Not have a soul? Are we just particles? Are we just a genetic code? Because as of right now, someone can get a saliva swab from you, and create a new one of you. Just because we can do it, should we do it? And it's a bit of those ethical questions. So the good thing about when I raise all these questions is I don't give you the answer. And if you ever read most of my books, even Tabby or whatever, I will not give you this is the right answer, because guess what? There is no right answer. I just propose different viewpoints, and you can lean one way, you can lean the other way. But it's a fascinating concept. It's the whole just because you can, should you do it? So if you want to scroll down a bit more, so you can see Rivka here. It's a little bit of a cheesecake shot, and I do, it's still, I think it's a really cool cover. This is when she's still in the army, and then you find out she left the army for a reason, and as you find out through. So one thing I did want to do is the two conflicting viewpoints is a professor and a priest who basically provide the conflicting viewpoints. And what you find is that Rivka, who's probably the transhuman in it, who's probably the slightly, who you could claim has lost her humanity a little bit, is probably the most human of all the main characters, because there's a deep dive into her life. Her life's a mess. She goes home every night to get drunk because she doesn't want to deal with a lot of her personal demons, which will all get explained as you read the story. But you can see, like, the transhumanism augmentations allow her to do different things. But you know what? She's just like most people. She has her problems, and she's not dealing with it really well. But you know what? That's life. People aren't always perfect. And she's supposed to be the more perfect human because she can start doing things that humanity can't. But she finds herself caught up. You know what? My life is still horrible. So I like that. I like that type of story, which has that little bit of a deep dive into it. But of course, there's still a lot of action. Like there's still a lot of things happening. It's not just a philosophical debate. I try to make it that it's exciting. Things always happen. You find out why they do certain things they do, and if you scroll down a bit more, there's a lot of action sequences. So I think if you like action, if you like grounded science fiction, if you like compelling characters, I think you'll really like Transhuman.
And I know, I think I heard you mention in a previous interview that you don't actually say the date of when this takes place. It's kind of just ambiguous.
A bit vague. It's a bit vague because the whole point would be, I would love that this is not too far in our distant future. So you can kind of see it that it's not the whole full cyberpunk where there's mega corporations and all the rest of it. There is some hints at it. If you read the story, there is mentioned in the background, but a lot of it is still a time not too far away from our own. So you can see there's a lot of happy action sequences. So there is still that excitement for it because you know what? I still like a bit of action. I still like a bit of. It can't just be a philosophical debate. So I made sure that if you're reading it, you're going to have a lot of fun reading it as well.
Right. And so, talk a bit about the rewards you have on here. You got some really good, some really cool. You got some really cool rewards that you have listed here.
So if you scroll down, so in terms of the PDF, I have. So if you scroll down to the center column, actually. So you get the PDF of the book. It is people like digital, and you get all the 5 Seconds trilogy as well as part of the PDF pack. But the one thing I want to promise is, by the time this is all done, that PDF pack, and I think I put a paragraph about it, is going to be huge. With Terra Limpus, by the time it was over, there were 8 additional digital rewards added.
Oh wow!
So one thing that before it's done, because one thing I find is great is a lot of different other creators will go, hey, here's issue 0, issue 1 of my book. Would you like to add it to your PDF pack? And I'm going, sure, great. And it grows. It absolutely grows. And by the end of it, it's going to be huge. So you can choose between basically the main cover and the variant cover, whichever you like. The ratio will be about 1 to 10. Until I get the final numbers, I can't confirm it, but we will 1 to 10. And as well as you get this really neat card, which goes, I had a bit of fun with it. It just basically is Rivka saying, do you need a hand? it's a small joke. It's done by an Italian artist, Elena, and she's amazing. I wish I could contract her for more work, but I don't have any projects currently open. You're in the US, so an A5 size is about the size of a postcard, slightly bigger than a postcard.
Mm-hmm.
And I put the inches dimensions in as well. So if anybody who really wants the exact dimensions, the inches is there, but about a postcard size. And you get both of these. You get the banner, and you also get basically a pencil sketch of Rivka done by Wallace. He's a Malaysian artist. And then if you scroll down a bit more, this is where you get really fun. So you can start getting original artwork from this. So there is an artist who did Terra Olympus, the variant cover. And he will be contributing, I think, a couple of internal pages as well. I'm trying to figure some bits and pieces out. But you'll get original artwork like this, which is basically an original art sketch. This is on Rivka. And it's basically ink with a little bit of watercolored remarks. You can see the detail he puts into that. And you get the original artwork for that. You get IO pack, and you get the one piece, which, some of it I'll be sad to see go, but you'll get original sketches. And some people love it. So in all my books, I always had a drawn-in tier, but I've never had this done before this way. So what I was thinking of, it's a bit of fun, is up to 10. I think we have up to 15 people can get drawn into a special black and white cover.
Oh wow!
So by the way, this cover will also appear in all the books. So you will appear in every single book. I'll put it in the back section so people can actually see the cover. So if you appear here, you appear in everybody's book. But you'll get a special, we'll print about 15 copies where you will appear in the cover. So not only will you appear in every single book, you will also appear in a special 15 copy limited edition run. You're on the cover as well. So I thought that was something really cute to do. So. And then Vaughn, who did Terra Olympus and who did the variant cover, also contributed 2 fully commissioned Copic art pieces. Unfortunately, Batman has been sold. So Batman is gone now. So I'm really sorry if you wanted Batman. You had to be quick. But Venom is still available.
Okay. And that's Elena's.
And then
original.
You get Elena's original as well, which is about A4 size. So if you like the artwork that was used, you can get Elena's one as well. But unfortunately, Batman got snapped up.
Yep, all gone. There it is. Yep.
So some of the earlier sketches have been snapped up. So we had a couple of early bird tiers to get some original sketches. Those went already. So again, thank you everybody for picking those up. But I think if you pick any of this original artwork, if you frame them, they will look absolutely amazing. And you can say it's original artwork. Well, I'm actually really sad sometimes to let it go, because I've got a digital scan. That's it. I will never have the original artwork again.
Right. This is great. So yeah, it's, as I say, it's going really well. I'm sure you're and so with this done, and for those that are fans of kind of like this early future cyberpunk type setting with some really good stories, definitely check out Transhuman. It's well worth it. As you mentioned earlier, it's very accessible. If you go with a PDF, right out the gate, you also get 5 seconds, the trilogy on there.
And
so
much more will be coming. The digital tier will expand. It's just I'm just waiting for some people to come back to me, and I'll expand the tier easily.
Wow, cool. Wow. And so where can be, so this is the Kickstarter. People can link to it straight on your website, sigmatestudio.com, correct?
Yep.
And you did mention too, for those folks that want to actually go ahead and just buy your books, your copies. You said you can get those at what, bookdepository.com?
Yep. So,
Is that what you said?
Yep, that's correct. So bookdepository.com is actually an Amazon company. Funny story, two people from Amazon left, set up their own company. Amazon thought they were too much of a competitor and bought the company out. So it's still Amazon. Everything is still Amazon. But anyway, Book Depository is great because it's got free shipping. You can buy from amazon.com.au as well, but Amazon charges you shipping. But if you buy from Book Depository, it's free shipping. So I always say Book Depository because it usually ends up being slightly cheaper than Amazon. I'm very lucky. All the books are distributed. So if you're in Australia or New Zealand, they are available in all bookstores. So if you go to a bookstore, you can ask for it. Or if you're lucky, they have some on the shelf. The other thing is, if you're in Australia, if you're in every country, almost every English-speaking country except for the US, and I'll come back to that point. They are in libraries, like, for example, Wordsmith is in about 500 libraries all across the world. You're talking Canada, UK, New Zealand, Singapore, Australia. You should be able to find Wordsmith and some other books in their collection. The reason why it's hard to find in US is my publisher, distributor, there is a lot of different rules to break into US libraries and a lot of hoops to jump through, especially for an overseas creator who doesn't have a publishing company within the US. There's a lot of hoops, and we haven't jumped through all of them yet. But I'm really hoping we do one day, and as soon as that's done, it would be so fantastic to see Wordsmith in libraries in America. It's in nearly everywhere in the world except for America. So I'm trying to break that. Absolutely trying to break that.
So thank you very much. So this is great. This has been a quick hour already. We're already not going to. So please, for those that are listening, it's just like, as I say, check out the Kickstarter. It's a great story. There's some great stuff, some great rewards on there. And please, and we'll add this to the show notes, going to sigmatestudio.com. You can see all of Stephen's books, all of the stuff is there. You'll see links to check that out. Bookdepository.com. Do a search for Stephen Cock. What was it?
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
KOK.
Yeah. Look, it's there. Look, and thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on. It's been a really fast hour.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stephen, add us to your list of places to come chat when you launch your next Kickstarter.
Oh, will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, good. One also too, because you are now in Australia, so I'm talking to you I'm talking to you in the future. It's Wednesday where you are.
That's correct. If it helps, correct. If it helps, the world hasn't ended yet, so the murder hornets haven't arrived. Yeah, so don't stress. Talking about that, there was one really funny story I read, which is basically 2020 is basically one time traveler trying to go back in time to fix things, and just by coming back every single time making it worse. So he stopped the murder hornets, which went away, but he started the hurricanes. It's oh man, it's